This is TechStrong TV. Welcome, everyone. We are back again for Infrastructure Matters, episode number 73, with my buddies here, Dion Hinchcliffe, and of course, Keith Townsend, who is coming in from Tennessee. You got your jet stream or whatever that thing is called.
The Airstream is parked in the middle of forest. I posted earlier this week that if you want to learn anything about site reliability engineering, try living off grid for any period of time, and you'll have a crash course master's level in keeping a website up.
There you go.
Are you on 5G or are you Starlink?
I am Starlink. So our platform look cool. It'll make up for it. I'll break in and out in our real-time recording of this, but it records locally and uploads it. So, it's much better than nothing.
Yeah, a whole lot better.
The wandering man out in the wilderness. Okay. So guys, we've got quite a bit to go through this morning, so I'm going to jump into it. First, short little piece on some earnings and reflections. We've had lots of earnings this week. I just spent the time this morning going through NetApp, Pure, and Nutanix. I haven't gotten to Dell yet, so we're not going to talk about that one. They may know, and kind of where they were at. All in all, everybody's had good quarters. Pure has an outstanding quarter. Pure Storage, they've just kind of blown out their money, the revenue, 12% year-to-year growth. The subscription business is up 21%. Just all kinds of really good numbers that are coming from them. And then NetApp had a slight miss because of some delayed of some transactions, but they were 2% year to year up in terms of where they're looking at, and still decent quarters. And Nutanix, of course, is up as well. Couple of common themes that went through all of them. They're experiencing the softness in the market over in Europe. So there is some softness going on there because of certain uncertainty, and the U.S. is probably carrying it all. The second piece, they all commented or had questions to them about VMware transitions. All of them have had, of course, Nutanix is double downs on that. That's kind of a key piece of their market. And that is happening, but it's slow. I mean, it's happening. It's slower as you would expect because you've got licensing issues. You have hardware issues to migrate. Although they're commenting about how fast you can move up in the cloud, like with an AWS, just because there's no hardware stuff there. And the third one is an AI, and we're going to get into that. Since these guys are all storage people and they're primarily storage that has to do with the enterprise, that's a slow moving ship right now, or train, or whatever you want to call it. Because most of that work is still going into the hyperscalers, the maybe AI factory kind of companies that are putting up CSPs, et cetera. But they are seeing, definitely NetApp has seen a couple of big data lakes being put into place that, people are taking where they've already got their environment and expanding it. A little bit less conversation about this from Pure. So that's kind of a bit on the transactional kind of piece, and I will stop there, and then we're going to go on to some other things that are even more interesting. So, okay. Let me go on to my partners in crime here, because we have a bunch of things going on with ChatGPT 4.5, Claude 3.7, and Google giving away Gemini code. So, Keith, why don't you take it off first, and then Dion can come into it.
Yeah, this has been a busy week for AI product and model development. There's Dion put, I think, both of these in. We both hit that ChatGPT 4.5 hit yesterday of this recording, and Amazon hit with Alexa Plus. I think ChatGPT 4.5 is probably the more, bigger story, in the sense that we've been waiting for 4.5 for quite some time. And I have to tell you that some of the early assessment from the AI experts is disappointment. It's not as big of a jump as it was from 3.5 to 4.0, or even 4.0 to 4.0. So, Diane, I'd love to hear your thoughts on both of these.
Yeah, well, it's the last big release between before the much expected GPT 5, and OpenAI is saying they put a lot more pre-training work into this to find more connections between all the data. scuttlebutt, though, the word on the street is that it takes 100 times more resources to answer a query in GPT 4.5 than it does in DeepSeek R1. That's 2 orders of magnitude. And can they be profitable on this? We'll see. Right now, only GPT Pro users can use this. It's available today, unlike Alexa Plus, which we have no idea when it's actually going to ship. You have to get on a wait list for that in some weeks in the future. But Plus users, which is the bulk of their subscribers, will have it next week. So we'll get more insight into it. It's an important bump. It still keeps them at the top of the leaderboards. So it is a highly capable model. Let's not think that it isn't. And it has somehow they found a lot more training data to throw at it. So they must be licensing. They must be spending to get access to data sets that are not openly available. But we'll see a lot of testing now that it's in people's hands as of yesterday morning. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Okay, so how does that work? If I'm going to license training data because it's not publicly available, and now I've trained my model on it, it's now publicly available, isn't it?
But through the license, right? So they've paid to make it available is the argument, right? So hopefully the licensees know what they're up against, because you can, the techniques are emerging to extract almost the original data set if you know how to query the model to get that out. So we'll see how that proceeds.
It kind of feels like once it's in the wild, it's in the wild. I mean, you've put it out there, and that's the big issue about why. Well,
this is what's what model distillation is all about. You can actually get the information out of a model in a way that you couldn't, like, out of a search engine. It's very interesting.
Okay. Well, what about the Google giving away Gemini?
Yeah, so a lot of these models are kind of put into action. Probably the biggest areas in AI coding. I'm looking forward to having a really great discussion with Brian Lau, who's a senior principal architect or developer at Amazon, not on the AI side, but he's been a big proponent of using AI in development. And Google has given away its this Gemini 2.0 code assistant, so I can just light up my favorite IDE, and this code assistant is fully free. There's, I think, some ridiculous token limit that the average individual developer probably shouldn't reach. The enterprise version is still needs to be licensed for multiple users and work groups. But if you're an independent developer, Gemini 2.0 the code assistant is actually pretty good. So it's an amazingly
leaderboards, right? Yeah. Gemini 2.0 is a super capable model. It's pretty brave of Google to give a huge number of completions away. So you can do a lot of work for free. And I think it's really smart to go after developers because they're the kingmakers. They made AWS what they are. And I think this is right out of that playbook to say, let's get Google Cloud adoption, get people hooked on Gemini 2.0, get in the hands of lots and lots of developers, because it's going to be the cheapest option for most to be able to get their hands on a really powerful coding AI.
So the assumption is that if I'm going to code with Gemini, that code is going to run on Google Cloud?
Yeah, and I think that's a strong correlation, Camberley. We've had Google at Cloud Field Day a bunch of times, and the delegates were always surprised at how well integrated the platform is with the model. So you can use Google's runtime, Google GKE, its various serverless platforms to actually call Gemini. And it's really easy to do. Matter of fact, I would say it's probably easier to use Gemini from the Google Cloud platform than it is to just go to, Gemini.com or Google, whatever the website it is, and use it similar to how we will use ChatGPT. Google has made it much better developer experience than maybe an end user experience, if that makes sense.
I think that comes from they were kind of like third to cloud, but and that means they learned a lot of the lessons from everybody, and they have the best cloud architecture, product architecture of them all. It's the most modern. It's just not as used as the other two because they came a little bit later to the party. So yeah, this will, I think, key to help them get an extra level of adoption, both in AI and in cloud.
Yeah, and these announcements don't surprise me because as we're coming into GTC, which is the big GPU conference that's put on by NVIDIA, and that was the 21st or something like the third week of March. We're now right now getting briefed on announcements that are going to be, piling in over the next 3 weeks. And I'm not going to be at the conference, but I think you guys are going to be. That thing is going to be crazy, absolutely crazy.
No doubt.
Yeah, it's become the de facto AI conference of the year. It's going to be up there with supercompute as just noise.
Yeah. And getting into that, so Diane, you raised a conversation for us today, a debate around whether or not AI, the technology of AI, is a layer on top of the current infrastructure, IT infrastructure, or whether or not it is what I see people talking about, which is this thing called the AI factory. So, and Dell coined that term last June when DTC at their big conference, the AI they called it the Dell AI factory, and then they've had the 18-wheeler rolling around all over the United States talking about the AI factory. And then I've seen that term picked up by multiple companies. So it's no longer a Dell term, it's a actual term that the market seems to be using for some reason. And that's just recently happened. And it's part of actually in the couple of briefings that I've had just recently coming into GTC. So let's talk about that. Why would it be part or why would it be separate?
Well, and there's arguments being made for both, but I think this is what's coming up is we've, traditionally kept our data in, SQL databases. We then, moved to NoSQL and graph databases and document-oriented databases and so on. Then vector databases arrived that says, all right, no, you really need to understand, much more unstructured information. It needs to be actually more deeply understood and more easily accessed and retrievable. And then, of course, now we have foundation models and large language models, diffusion models, and they store data. There's no question about it. We were just talking about how you can extract some of the data that's under the covers. And so is it just part of the data layer that we've always had in our infrastructure? Or is it something new because, AI does things that these technologies didn't do before? If we look at AI agents, they actually take autonomous action in a way that we didn't predetermine. They determine how things will happen. So there's an argument that we now have an AI layer, a new AI layer on top of our infrastructure layer. So I just wondering if you guys want, what your take was on that.
Keith?
Yeah. So I'm going to say AI is just another version of compute. I think it does blur the lines in between data and compute a little bit, but if we look at kind of the vectorization of data, if we look at how models are trained, models don't keep all of their knowledge within the model forever. You don't have the same level of clarity around your data when you're talking about the model itself. Now, when you're using your own data to and adjacent to a model, that's a different layer. But again, that's compute. That you're just saying, I'm going to apply this compute, this application layer against my data. So I don't see this as yet a new layer. I just see it as, an advancement in compute.
Yeah, I view it as it's a new spike through the layer, right? It has both compute implications and data implications, I think. And it's a new column in the infrastructure layer.
So I'm going to go back to some of the earnings calls that I was sitting through because these are all data people. I'm not necessarily the vector people, but if you looked at like NetApp and George Kurian talked about, a couple very big wins of people creating a data lake. They were already currently a NetApp customer. They're broadening that base to be creating a data lake capability. And then talking about, how you're bringing in both your file, your block, which is your databases, and then also the next piece is the multimodal kind of piece, the videos, et cetera, that have to go into the training. So they're creating this separate system here. However, once you train that training data, depending upon what the application is going to go against potentially a transactional system, right? So if I'm going to use AI to present information on my website based upon maybe a retail transaction or whatever, that, or if I'm going to use AI, let's say I'm going to use AI on insurance, kind of submissions, that kind of thing. So to do that analysis, so you have this connection between the transactional traditional systems, processing systems, with this AI kind of analysis that goes through. Think also customer service, right? Customer service, that's part of that application within that application. So it has to be integrated with that layer. You guys would know better than I do because you're coders and that kind of, or you've coded and that kind of stuff, and I haven't done that. Then I'm thinking about, okay, like VAST just came out and added block to their file and object capability. So that's recognizing the data layer, and why they're doing that is because they're recognizing the transactional data has to come into that training piece of it and do the training as part of it. So they're expanding that piece of it. So, and you have, okay, so VAST and NetApp have talked about bringing in, they're building vector databases within their data management system. Dell has chosen a different way that what they're doing is they're just integrating with other vector databases, not incorporating into their data management. That's a strategy difference, but you still see this, this integration of these pieces here. So it'll be interesting to where this turns out. I get your comments, blow a hole in what I just said or whatever.
No, I think it proves it. I mean, quite frankly, yeah.
And I think that's representing a huge shift in the market. Just a few years ago, I'd be in briefings with HPE, Dell, NetApp, and asking about the data layer, not the storage bits, the zeros and ones and deduplication and all the all of the storage level services they offered, but the actual data and helping to make data easier to process. And none of those players wanted anything to touch with the data. They said that was left up to ISVs, database providers, and basically SIs, and they wanted to focus on the bits and bobs. Now the conversation has really changed because we're seeing, again, to the earlier comment, to Dion's earlier comment, this explosion beyond a single layer and this blurring of what's needed. If I need to retrain my model on my latest data or my latest transactional data, what's the fastest and easiest way to get to that? If my AI model and my data exist on the same storage system, isn't it best to do it at the storage layer? Mm-hmm. We'll see.
Yeah, that's the data management layer that we've been hearing them all talk about. For NetApp, it would be Blue XP. For Pure, it would be Fusion. I'm not sure the name of what VAST is calling it, but it's probably just VAST capabilities environment that they're doing. But bringing that out to be able to manage, and then having a separate, actual storage plane that has all the traditional capabilities that are down there. So interesting. Thanks for bringing that up. It's a good conversation. So we'll see where that pans out over the long haul, and then you have to also think about how this connects with some of the people that got their data in the cloud. So that's also.
And I try to look at what's different in AI that wouldn't normally be found at the data layer. And the only example I can really come up with is what we're seeing is the safety layer that it's appeared in so many AI infrastructure that does make sure that there's no inappropriate information being generated, no private information is being revealed, that the results are accurate, reduces hallucinations, and that's not something we've ever seen before in a data layer. To that degree. So that's something new, but I still think it's something that we actually probably need in our data layer. So I think it still goes back to, for now, AI is a new element in our compute and data layer in the infrastructure stack. And that we haven't seen anything quite yet that rises to something that would require us to create an entirely new layer, because we have some new third or fourth entity in the stack. So,
well, and we're really early stages into the enterprise architecting this. I mean, we heard that very much so from the calls that were on, the earnings calls about, this is still, we're looking at 2025, 2026 in terms of this really rolling out to the point that it's in application. Much of the money that's going out right now is still into the big foundation models, the people that are building cloud service providers that are building GPU as a service, those, or the other ones that are already research labs of some sort. Maybe it's like Harvard, medical that was cited by VAST, or it's some other pharma that's already has that, but they're expanding that environment to not be an HPC, but a east-west architecture to drive looking at new drugs and sort of things. So anyway, all interested in me going. So our next topic, HashiCorp, big acquisition by IBM. Who wants to take that one?
I'd kick it off real quick. I'd love to hear what Keith has to say, though. He might be spending more time with it. But IBM made another very expensive acquisition last year, $6.4 billion for HashiCorp, the infrastructure as code security firm, a darling with developers as well. But also during the acquisition, or around the same time, HashiCorp made a major licensing change to Terraform, which is their main product. That really left a bad taste with a lot of developers' mouths. Developers really value the attributes of open source, and licensing is kind of a religious topic. And so, it's a question of what is IBM going to turn this into another Red Hat acquisition, or how's it going to work out?
So, for our listeners, just let's briefly say what is Terraform. Terraform is the open source. HashiCorp is the distribution.
Yeah, so let's, I guess it's important to understand why is HashiCorp getting acquired? Like, why is this unicorn $6 billion now publicly traded company in a position where they can't grow organically? So HashiCorp has a series of applications, Terraform being its most popular, then followed by Console and a bunch of other developer Kubernetes, new web type applications. Terraform is by far the most popular of all of their offerings and projects. Its role is for you to programmatically describe and deploy infrastructure. So whether you're talking about AWS, Google Cloud, on-prem infrastructure, VMware, vSphere, you can orchestrate your infrastructure as code. So I can say consistently,
and do it across multiple clouds. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest attractions, right? It abstracts cloud infrastructure.
Yeah. So and they went the open source route, and frankly, it grew. We saw what the same thing happens with most open source. It grew to a point, and they couldn't grow it beyond that, and they couldn't really tell a great cohesive story around platform. I said 2 or 3 years ago that HashiCorp needed to sell itself to an IBM or VMware. Did it make sense for one of those two companies to buy them? We'll soon see, because IBM has made the purchase. In order to help CTOs and CIOs understand the value of HashiCorp, you need a white glove service, you need the Salesforce, you need the account penetration. Terraform was one of those things. Either you bought it or you wanted it free. There was no in between. So a lot of folks that are angry are the folks that wanted it free. Some Terraform and the Terraform product team would tell you it's mainly the competitors that are complaining that it's no longer open source and open source in the traditional manner and free in the traditional manner. But some developers, especially Diane mentioned it, that this is a religious debate for a lot of developers. It's either open or it's not.
Okay. So, and I understand primary competitors would be people like a Puppet or an Ansible or something like that, correct?
Yeah, so I don't even know if they're competitors
As much as
looking at
complementary.
the same
Okay.
problem in a different way.
We just
Cloud
lost
formation.
Keith here.
Sorry. Well, the Starlink is probably switching to his new Starlink satellite. So we're back.
The old reliable Starlink. So I'm back.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll start the competitive question. Okay. So I think Terraform competes with things like Puppet or Ansible, or maybe they're just more complementary, Keith?
Yeah, so IBM is going to have, some work on their hands, kind of rationalizing Ansible versus
Okay, we're losing him
Tor
again.
and Terraform.
I wonder if we're actually losing him. The upload might work just fine, right?
Diane, I'll just let you answer that question because I go through these periods. And it's all right.
So then Terraform, just as positioning, kind of competes with Ansible and Puppet. Dion, is that?
Well, I think first, some of what HashiCorp does, that's true. It really started out really as secret management. So if you look at like CyberArk or Azure Key Vault or Beyond Trust, those are often considered more kind of the original competitors with HashiCorp. But Terraform has become super popular as for infrastructure management. And so HashiCorp now does multiple things like so many cloud vendors do. So, they have, I think, an array of competitors at different product levels.
Yeah. So, I mean, many years ago, IBM and, the current CEO did this when he wasn't the CEO, which is drove the purchase of Red Hat. At that time, at Evaluator Group, we were all scratching our head at $34 billion and like going, doing the back of the napkin about how long it would take to return the investment on this thing. Is like, it's never going to happen. I think it was 34 billion, or maybe it was 43. I can't remember. One of those two.
It was a large number. It was a huge number. Yeah.
Number. And this is not that big, but then again, it's not, complete platform play, but it is a platform play if what you're talking about is managing across clouds, infrastructure code. And, they gave a lot of cred to Red Hat. They brought them into when you have client executives that walk into the CEO and CIO kind of capability, you're kind of walking in Red Hat, right? And so I think there would be some similarities in terms of the go-to-market on this one, or is this just going to get rolled into the IBM stuff as opposed to what happened?
Well, I think a lot of people hope it doesn't get rolled into an IBM only story. It's really valuable for IBM to be part of a bigger story. The CIOs really want their IT to work with all the rest of their IT. They don't want these silos in their organization. So it's from a standpoint that HashiCorp provides IBM with credibility across clouds. That's a great story, and that's one that they should keep. They shouldn't mess with that, and I hope that they don't. But the IBM of old would have, this was something they may not have really focused on preserving. But the current IBM, and they're very much on the upswing. People have almost written IBM off. They are back. There's no question about it. And if they can do with HashiCorp what they did with Red Hat, this is going to be going to do really well for them, even at this price.
So we won't have the Red Hat Summit now. We'll have the Red Hat plus HashiCorp event or something.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what the IBM Cloud folks do with this, because we don't talk about IBM Cloud enough. The IBM Cloud does an amazing job working with some of the other hyperscalers to augment your capabilities of running some of your traditional workloads in public clouds in a way that enterprises accept. And that's one of HashiCorp's original stories was, how do I take my mainframe app, modernize it, and have a connector? This is what Console did. Have a connector from my new world applications into my mainframe applications, and then run that in the cloud like operating model. So this is the IBM will be able to expose some of the more interesting capabilities on the enterprise side of a HashiCorp.
Well, we'll see where this pans out. So thank you very much, guys. And thank you for listening in. I think we got everything covered here that we're going to do today. Did I miss anything?
No. That was a sweep.
Okay. There it is. That's a wrap, guys. And we will see you next week. Don't forget to like, follow, share, all that stuff. Because you know what? Even the guy that is in the background that's doing all the video work is now listening to our Infrastructure Matters. And that's really cool. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.